Friends with all the night dreamers, talking to you at night. Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not in sight. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's Talk Show Radio, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Dreamers Talk Show will fix your despair, because Gary's talking to you at night.
No, I was
name
not.
on it.
No.
Do you know the author?
I do.
You do. And how would you estimate that madam or gentleman, the author?
The person is a current or former U.S. government employee.
And it states here that this is the public version of the author's report.
Yes.
So where might one find the non-public version of the author's report?
I don't know the answer to that.
Would that be with the Department of Defense?
I don't know.
The unknown is calling. Welcome to Night Dreams Forbidden Realms.
Well, here it is, October the 24th, and boy, time is going by so fast. Halloween is coming up next week, and we have two great guests. We have, well, who do we have, JC?
Well, for Halloween next week, we have Thomas Jane leading it off, followed up by Mr. Ron Fitzgerald, who's going to talk about some scary vampire stories. And this is a man that has a coffin in his house.
Yeah, could you imagine that, too, when the police came to his house and said, what is that coffin there for?
Exactly. That's a tough explain.
Yeah. Well, did you do anything exciting today, JC?
Let's see. No, not today. Today was like a Monday, even though it was a Friday, which is strange. I think I had my weekdays in reverse this week, actually.
Okay. Well, let's find out some information about our guest.
Mr. Timothy A. Phillips was appointed a senior National Intelligence Service executive in May 2006 and served as the acting director and the deputy director for the All-domain Anomaly Resolution Office. Previous intelligence community IC assignments include service as the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, that's the NGA, Afghan Task Force Director, GEOINT Mission Manager for South Asia, and Associate Deputy Director for Operations at NGA, Intelligence Fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, Special Advisor to the National Intelligence Manager for Military Issues, and National Intelligence Collection Manager for South Asia, where he managed national all-source collection operations. As the former NGA Director for Mission Integration, he was responsible for the processing, exploitation, and dissemination of geospatial intelligence products. Serving as the managing editor for Intelligence Today, he provided best and latest finished intelligence products from all agencies on issues of vital national security interest to senior-level intelligence customers and analysts across the IC. As chief of the Collection Coordination Group, he was responsible for IC Enterprise Collection Management, collection-centric situational awareness, and IC Collection Support Services. He oversaw the ODNI's sensitive reconnaissance operations mission planning and national-level intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance mission coordination and allocation. Mr. Phillips served as the acting deputy for global, maritime, and air intelligence, and the chief technology officer, where he led the development of technology, national policy, information access standards, and governance necessary to improve government-wide access to maritime and aviation information, data and intelligence critical to intelligence production. As the former Chief of Staff for the Associate Director of National Intelligence, Chief Information Officer, he supported the CIO in the execution of his duties relating to the information technology infrastructure and enterprise requirements for the IC.
Well, Tim, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing this Friday night?
I'm outstanding. I'm out here in Arizona enjoying life.
What's the weather like?
In the 50s and clear. We're about 4,200 feet on the side of Catalina Mountains. Just gorgeous out here.
sounds like it. I'm up here in the Pacific Northwest, and it's typical weather, rain. You know, I got to ask you a question. When you were a child, did you ever watch those sci-fi movies with UFOs and aliens with the one eye?
We did, but I spent most of my life watching Armed Forces and Radio TV and services. My dad was in the Air Force, so I grew up on Air Force bases all over the world. So we didn't get to see a lot of network TV growing up.
Oh, wow.
But I did, but I loved the shows on Saturday. We would get the sci-fi movies and wrestling, of course.
Oh, wrestling, yeah. Have you ever heard of a wrestler named Jimmy Stuka?
I have.
Yeah, he's no longer with us, but he was a relative of my wife. So I got to know some of the most famous wrestlers, back in the 70s and 80s and stuff like that. And they warned me after I got married to my wife, don't ever do anything wrong or you're going to get a visit from one of us. So that was
amazing athlete.
Yeah. So what, of all the places you've been as a child around the world, what was your favorite?
I would probably say the island of Guam. We first got to Guam in 1965 when families start going there, and the island was littered with military equipment from the war. And we would start off the school year with a brief from EOD telling us not to touch stuff. But being a young kid, being able to go to Taragi Beach, and they had the Air Force blue buses run around the base and show your ID card. It was great, and they had a little hill by the gas station, and we would watch the op cycle, the takeoff and landings, the B-52s and the KC-135s heading across, South Asia, going to Vietnam, and the entire base would just roar and shake with the smell of, jet fuel and black smoke. And then it would be deathly silent for about 12 hours. And then you look up and you would see the bombers coming back, all queued up. And then that whole cycle of rearming and repair and munitions, debriefs was just absolutely amazing to be a young kid out there on the island. That's, you had crews flying missions from the base I was at. It's very strange, but loved it. Beautiful weather, beautiful people.
Oh, yeah. A friend of mine, I don't know if you remember an airline called Republic Airlines back in the 80s and 70s and all that. They were a major airline that went bust. But a friend of mine was one of the vice presidents of Republic Airlines. And during Vietnam, he flew a B-52, he said, from Guam over to Vietnam. And what ended his career, he wanted to become a brigadier general before he retired. He was a colonel. And what happened is he saw an object off his wing. And what he told me, it was a UFO. And, worst thing in his military career, he got on the horn, what he told me. And he radioed in, we got an object off our wing. And he described it. And his co-pilot said, well, we're in Fort now. And a few minutes later, he got, a radio message when he landed not to depart or the crew depart the craft. They surrounded his craft with, military MPs, I guess, and escorted him into a building where then he was interrogated and everybody else was, interrogated. I don't know. Have you ever heard any of those?
We actually have, and I am very, very proud. And one of the best things we did in the AARO office to try and remove that stigma of reporting. During that time of the war, if you had reported a UAP or UFO incident, you could possibly lose your ability to fly. You could be grounded. That was a career ender to admit that you saw something you didn't understand. And one of the things that AARO was able to do in cooperation with the J3 of the Joint Staff is actually put out direction to the Department of Defense, a directive to tell them if they see a UAP to report the UAP through their chain of command and to retain data. That was one of the more frustrating things as we were asked to look back at very, very infamous cases, the Nimitz case, trying to get our hands on the actual data so we could do a scientific examination of facts was very, very difficult because there was no direction in the department to retain data. But that's one of the greatest things we had is we removed that stigma. If you see something you don't understand, you've got to report it because there's people that really need to understand the phenomena. And we hope to kind of extend that in the future to the public and kind of have a public reporting mechanism, kind of crowdsource this, and it would help our understanding and maybe help us understand what the baseline is. There's a huge collection bias right now in the detection of UAPs, or where you see the UAP cases are clustered. It's because where we tend to have sensitive things we want to defend, we tend to have a lot of surveillance and ISR capability. So we do detect things. However, what's the baseline? The current director of AARO was, that was one of the things we didn't understand. There's in the folklore of UFOs and UAP, there's been books written about the UFO bias toward nuclear infrastructure, where weapons are being stored or developed. And there's whole books on it. Well, is that true? How many UAP incidents are over the cornfields in Nebraska? No, we don't know. We don't have a way to compare that right now. And we were trying to get a baseline of the activity. The data's there. The data has never been exploited. So with the use of AI and the algorithms that we were able to invent and create and actually field, if we take historical data, that's there. The government's already collected and stored this data. If you think of it, space surveillance data, the weather data, the air traffic control radar, the DOD radar, everything that Northcom, NORAD has. If you take that data and you're able to throw some algorithms in the AI and some machine learning, so we have an incident, we can go back in the historical data and say, hey, is there any activity that corresponds with that case, and can we reconstruct the track? Where did it come from and where did it go? And there's been some great progress in doing that and give us a much better understanding of what the baseline of activity is. What are the interests, or what are they trying to survey? And how prevalent is it? We do have that collection bias because we do have things to protect critical infrastructure and operational forces.
Well, AARO, the question I had for you, Tim, AARO, how similar is that program to like what Project Blue Book was?
Nothing like it. They're apples and oranges. AARO is I would say, the first legitimate effort by lawmakers, to truly understand the UAP phenomena. The actual budget is classified, and I can't reveal that, but it's very, very adequate. Okay, they have a robust budget. They have access to all of our government's ISR, reconnaissance, surveillance data. We partner with basically the Old Manhattan program. If you think about the Department of Energy labs that we team with, we work with the Service Intel Center, so the National Air and Space Intelligence Center, the National Space Intelligence Center, Missile Center. We have these amazing partners, and we have the budget to establish analytical and technical cells to help understand that. We can work with MIT, where helped invent with the British radar in World War II. And actually, there was an incident down at Langley where they had a UAS, attacks, but they had incidents for over a period of almost 2 weeks that they couldn't detect, they couldn't stop. When we were asked if we could go back through the available radar data and try to understand the tracks, where were the UASs launched from, what were the things they were interested in, and how did they egress from the Langley, base area there. And we work with MIT to do that. Now, that's not a UAP, that was a UAS, but due to the technical and the scientific expertise that AARO has and the partners that we have, we're able to, turn and, focus and help provide leads to, in that case, the law enforcement task force that was knocking on doors trying to figure out who was launching and violating, the restricted airspace over the base. And these UAP technologies and techniques, procedures we have developed work very well against UAS as well.
That is very interesting. Now, you mentioned the Nimitz. Again, depending on who you talk to, a lot of people say it's off-world. A lot of it say it's skunk works. What's your feeling about what happened with the Nimitz?
First of all, I'd like to say it's a frustrating case. It happened a long time ago, and there was some truly unusual anomalies. There's some strange things that happened, and in real time, Commander Third Fleet and the staff, they were actually on the flag bridge. They understood some weird stuff was going on. You had the Princeton out there with one of the first combat workups battle group as they were going into the Gulf. Well, they were picking up things they didn't quite understand. They actually vectored fighter aircraft to go look at bogeys. And there were visual and there were radar sightings. The problem, that data can't be found. So Third Fleet knew at the time that there was something strange going on and actually asked or directed or ordered that the data off the Princeton be preserved. And we understand that tapes from the Spy 1 radar was actually, flown to San Diego, and from San Diego was transported to Dahlgren, Virginia, where the Navy has the labs to exploit that radar, that digital radar data. There were 2 physical searches that were initiated by the Navy and AARO trying to find that original data. We could not find it. We also were going into the archives, so we wanted to see the deck logs and the flight logs, the journals of what was going on. So if you did vector a fighter to go, examine a bogey, where you pulled a fighter off an exercise and a workup for a combat deployment to go look at a bogey, there should be a record of it. Up in, Pryfly should have had written it down if they told someone to take a look. As we went into the Ark, we could not find the logs from the ships. Was it incompetence? We don't know. We just couldn't find the original data to help understand what was going on.
Could have been covered up.
But, it happened over 20 years ago. I can't tell you. Was it incompetency or cover up? We don't have enough evidence to, with any confidence at all, declare what it was. Now, it was interesting as we were working with the Navy, and they were doing an investigation because there's so much interest in this case, that one of our seniors, our CTO, our Chief Technology Officer, was actually at a cocktail party in Old Town Alexander and was talking about where he worked, AARO, and he found out that the gentleman there used to be the director of DARPA. And he had mentioned what happened during the exercise where he had his technicians actually, and they're wearing black jumpsuits, who actually flew out to the Princeton to recover some kit because they had, at the time, an experimental ISR system that was part of the exercise being used that was not shared. So it was still a black program and it wasn't out there, but it was part of the exercise. So when the crew came out, they went into the captains, the technicians from DARPA, they had actually gone into the captain's cabin. Now, I've got 3 years at sea as a Marine officer. That is strange behavior. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And the crew saw that, and there was a retired Navy chief in a podcast actually commented on these weird people that flew out there wearing these black jumpsuits that recovered a lot of, data and equipment from the ship. Well, we know what that was. That was the DARPA team that went out and recovered equipment for that ISR system that they were using during the workup. So we were able, with pretty high confidence, and then we were able to verify that. It was a little bit frustrating as we were trying to get the flight logs that would verify the tail number of the aircraft and what time they land, to go back and say that that incident corresponded with that actual sortie. And that's when we discovered we couldn't find the journals and the logs. We don't know where they were. Now, that was not a good thing for our government, but AARO exists today. And if we had something like that happen today, DOD and the Navy has clear instructions to report it and retain data. And then AARO has the ability very, very quickly to get a team out overnight or the same day, to be able to start that forensic investigation, professional debriefers to talk to the witnesses to help understand and reconstruct what happened. And then we will work with other agencies to see if there's any other surveillance data that could help us understand, a UAP incident. So we have made great improvements since 2004, but I don't think we're ever truly going to know what happened in the Nimitz incident.
I don't think so.
I don't think we're. AARO's tried, the Navy's tried to understand. We know something happened, but we can't tell you what it was.
Maybe they don't want the public to know. Not AARO.
I don't. I truly don't. I've been in the intel in the military for about 45 years before I retired, and I have never worked in a program with the access and the resources that we have in the positional authority. The director of AARO reports to the Deputy Secretary of Defense and to the Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence. You don't get much higher than that in the government. And then you report to 12 different oversight committees up on the Hill. There is a lot of scrutiny. There's a lot of reporting going on. And it's sincere. One of the things that I would always be asked when I went up and I briefed Honorable Hicks, Catherine Hicks was at the time, she was the Deputy Secretary of Defense, and she would ask me after I briefed her, she says, Tim, is there anything we can do? Is anybody blocking your investigation? Is there any way we can help? And that was sincere. The same thing with the Director of National Intelligence when I briefed her, Avril Hain. She was incredible. And they downfield block for us. They got us, they introduced, they got us in the room, when things were being discussed, we needed to hear. And I have never seen that type of access and cooperation in my life. Normally, when you get into these special access and controlled access programs, by design, things are very compartmentalized. And the fact that if it was related to UAP, we had access to it. I've never seen anything like this in my career. The fact that they encouraged us to go find the truth. And I know there's a lot of people out there in the public are frustrated because they don't know what AARO's reporting. AARO reported a lot, but we never could go out and tell them what they wanted to hear. And the reason AARO still exists is that the intelligence and the reporting that AARO produces to help us understand UAP incidents is viable to the government. And I will say right now, we never found any evidence of anything supernatural, or any extraterrestrial sentient being. We did discover, we had thousands of cases, and a small percent of the cases, and John, the last time I was up on the Hill, we got out of the skiff, and in public testimony, he actually told the American public and Congress, there's a small percentage of cases that we don't understand. We know there's something there. We can measure it. We can detect it. We don't know what it is. And as an intel officer, as a military professional, I'm a little bit concerned about that because where we detect them are in very, very sensitive locations or close to operational forces. And the world is too dangerous of a place to have something we don't understand operating in close proximity to something we need to protect. So we looked at it as a national security issue. often we would get reports, partial reports of a flight crew or a reconnaissance system would pick up something that was unique and novel. We could not correlate the signature of what was measured with a known adversary or friendly system, either a maritime or an aviation system. It didn't correlate. We didn't understand it. And that led us, to the second, what could it be? So part of AARO's mission is to prevent technological and operational surprise. And we had reporting that came from operational units that we were reported as a UAP, something we didn't understand, that actually resolved as a new adversary capability that was detected by one of our sensors, and using our analytic capability and more collection, we were able to understand what that system was, and we were able to have that published as serialized intelligence. So AARO does that, but that's not reported to the public. It never will be. Maybe in 70 years, if you're still alive, it'd be declassified. But AARO does stuff, but they're not hiding. They're not trying to hide, something that is supernatural. These are man-made objects. These are foreign systems that we were able, to help the community understand. And some of the cases, we actually were in the field with the military security personnel that reported them, and we were able to help them understand that was, Starlink satellites, or that was the International Space System. However, there were other things that were reported that we were able to confirm, measure, and track, but we don't know what they were. And that is concerning. We need to know more, and we need to do a better job of detecting them farther away from critical infrastructure. And those are the very, very intriguing cases, the hard cases that we're working hard to understand and to try to put out better instrumentation and do a better job of incorporating all the sensor capability of our country. So one of the neat things that AARO was able to achieve is we were able to define what a UAP in space was. So that was important because, as you know, in our center of gravity as a nation when it comes to warfighting is control of space, the real high ground.
Tim, we need to take this break, and let's find out about these UAPs in space too, how you guys track it and get the information on that. When we come back, we'll be back with Tim in about 3 minutes. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I miss, but don't be unkind. It don't mean I'm blind. Perhaps there's a thing or two I think of lying in bed I shouldn't have said, but there it is. You see, it's all clear. You are meant to be here. From the beginning. Maybe I might have changed, not been so cruel, not been.
Night Dreams Talk Radio, the show they warned you about, and for damn good reason.
And we're back with Tim. You know, these UAPs, again, I know some friends that were, astronauts or was astronauts, and other people in NASA. And they have told me when we went to the moon, for example, that we saw craft on the moon. That other ones, well, they were in their craft circulating, the Earth. They saw UAPs. I mean, have you guys investigated any of those claims?
We were aware of the claims, and I've actually talked to an astronaut about some of those claims. But no, what we were interested in were objects approaching both our solar system and then the Earth itself. So as you know, that we do space surveillance, and we work with the Space Force and Spacecom and work with NASA. AARO does that because as a Marine, I want to try to detect a threat as far away as possible, give us time to react. So if we could see an anomaly approaching the Earth, the Space Force guys, they're thinking about threat. Is that a weapon system, a deorbiting missile? What is it? And they have some great protocols. And as you know, they have cataloged not hundred, but tens of thousands of pieces of space junk that actually is a hazard to space vehicles. But once they determine, they think they know what it is, and it's not a threat, that anomaly no longer interests them, because that's not their mission. And what we were doing in some of the little war games is, okay, we know that track is not of interest to you, but we would like to know, does that track correlate with a UAP incident or report in the atmosphere or in the maritime environment? Is there a correlation there? And can we build a track from, entry into the atmosphere to someplace on Earth? And that's what we're really interested in doing. We've invested a lot in understanding, what's in the neighborhood of the Earth. Where do things go? Where do they come from? And we do that. And we're trying to automate that. It's a huge data problem. And that's where they made some real investments and some improvements, trying to come up with the algorithms and the high-speed computing using machine learning and AI, because unlike the Chinese, we can't train and hire 10,000 analysts. We've got to do it with machines, and we've got to operate at machine speeds. There's a great symmetry between what we're doing with the surveillance role, trying to detect UAPs, and what the administration wants to do with the Golden Dome. They're kind of getting serious about defense of the homeland. There were cases where we were working with Department of Justice, Department of Defense, and DHS to protect critical infrastructure in the homeland. We were looking for UAPs and we detected UASs. At the same time, what we want to do is when DHS or Department of Justice, state, local, or tribal authority detects a UAP, when they're looking for you, we need to be able to quickly exchange tracks and share data so we can have a coordinated operational response. We don't want another Langley where we were defenseless, where we had something flying in restricted airspace, for over a week and we could do nothing about it. The world is too dangerous of a place, to be impotent. We just can't afford that. And as I mentioned before the show, when we had these true UAP cases and no incident that I was privy to was there any hostile activity or aggressive activity that was detected by any of our witnesses or any of our sensors. And we would detect things we didn't understand, but we may declare them unauthorized but not hostile because they didn't do anything threatening.
Yeah, but could they be gathering information about our military, our equipment, our bases? Because, there's been a lot of reports of these things near military bases.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, we know that some of these uninvited systems attempt to avoid detection. We've actually had security actually following a device, a car-sized device, following roads. And as an old aero observer, I love following roads, to confirm where I'm at if I got to do a mission fire. But when they actually saw military planes in a convoy actually leave main side, the device actually got off the road and hovered so it wouldn't be detected by the trucks going by. So yeah, we know that they're aware. I think there's a human on the leak and a human on the loop, and I think they're adversary systems. I don't think it's Space Week, trying to get into Area 51 to see what's going on. They're too sophisticated and they're operating too far from access to some of these large government, ranges and test sites.
Well, what concerns me is these fast movers, underwater fast movers. Have you done much investigation on that? Because, I heard from various Navy personnel, mainly submariners, that real fast-moving objects in the oceans.
We've actually met with the Office of Navy Intelligence. We have met with a lot of their labs. We've actually deployed to work with the Navy on some underwater anomalies that were actually detected, and we were able to eventually solve what they were. We found that the maritime environment, or that domain, to be very, very hard to work with. They were even more compartmentalized than the space domain. And their primary focus is detecting the metal of steel moving through water. That's what they were really focused with. And to tell you the truth, we didn't make a lot of headway there. What we decided to do is prioritize the air domain and the space domain, where we had partners to work with, we had data, and we had some success. We hadn't got as far in the maritime domain as we would wish. We do understand, sounds, noise, and we're very interested when you've got reports of things that, on the face of it, seem to go beyond our understanding of physics. So that does get the attention of our scientists, but I will tell you the domain that we had the least success with, and we're just not very mature, was in the maritime domain. And I know that AARO meant to address that in the future, but you only have so much time and so many resources. And we focused in the air domain, we focused in space, and we really were focused on national security sites. It's a large country, it's a large globe, and since we were a DoD entity, we really were trying to protect critical infrastructure and operational forces was our primary concern. But we did want a crowdsource, we did want a public reporting mechanism, and we did want to take in the real-time data from the next-gen digital weather radars that can detect dust molecules icing over, from biostatic. There's a lot of energy in the atmosphere. It's going to reflect, radio waves across the spectrum. That could be detected. Use weather radar, use air traffic control, and try to build a comprehensive, integrated, common operational picture so we can understand what's going on. That's one of the things that's been lacking. And, I was very proud of my last operational deployment. We are actually in support of a Department of Justice, a DHS, and DOD operation. And we were able to provide an integrated COP that the law enforcement operators could respond to. We could provide lat, long, and location of the anomaly that they could, in this case, they could prosecute. And these incidents, these systems, were adversary systems. They were not something that came from another dimension of another world. These were state-sponsored systems being operated in places they should not be.
Well, you've mentioned AI a lot here tonight, but here's the thing, too. AI has really muddied up the waters, too, because now, and I'm saying it because now you can generate images that are so realistic, you have to spend a lot of time to find out if it's real or not. I'm talking about the professionals will spot it right away. But the people that aren't professionals and look at that, they believe this stuff. And it's getting really out of control right now. Another thing that's really getting me out of control right now is the 3-eye atlas. So many people think, oh, it is a alien craft coming to Earth to destroy Earth or whatever. People need to get their act together.
People, they like sensationalism, they like conspiracy, and you're right, disinformation is a huge concern that we have. We know that the Soviet Union used the UAP topic to kind of undermine the Americans' public, confidence in their military and their government during the Cold War.
Yeah.
We know that the whole UAP topic was used to disguise or conceal what we were actually doing. There's a lot of cases of that in our history. We know that, and we had evidence we were involved with that. Not doing it, but uncovered cases where the government provided, doctored photos or images of UFOs flying around in Nevada. We had witnesses came forward and shared that with us, and that was done to kind of hide what they were actually doing. And we also noticed that there were reports from educated, credible, sane people that saw things they didn't understand now, and their assessment was that it was supernatural or something from another world. When the people who reported these anomalies that they saw the U.S. government recovering or reverse engineering or testing other world technology, and they reported it to AARO using the secure reporting mechanism that was established or referred to us by either an IG or by Congress, we found that their descriptions were very, very accurate. They were good witnesses. They were reliable witnesses. Now, they didn't understand what they observed, and their attribution was wrong, but their physical descriptions were right on. I can remember a witness that claimed that we were testing an alien spaceship out there in Nevada at the test site. And we thanked him for his patriotism and reminded him that he had a lifelong obligation, the non-disclosure agreement he signed. And then we went out to the agency in the military service that was conducting these tests and say, what is it? We want to see it. When we actually saw the video, we clearly understood why that gentleman who was legally present, he was working out there, but he wasn't privy, wasn't read onto the program. When you saw that, you would say, oh my God, that shit looks like something out of a scientific movie, out of something out of Star Wars or, Star Trek. It's just what you would, growing up, and you'd ask me early on, did I see these science fiction movies? Yeah, if you saw that, you would say, yeah, that would be a logical conclusion. And we were so amazed by one of the programs of record that we actually asked the three-letter agency for an image that we could put in the SAP-CAP version of the historical report to be able to show and demonstrate to the senior leadership, in the House and the Senate, how, people can mistake these programs for alien technology when they're actually engineered, flown, and developed by humans here.
Oh, I believe that because technology is advancing so fast, and the craft, experimental craft is coming out the average person see that, they're going to think it's probably off-world. But here's the thing, and I don't want to get you in trouble or anything like that, but do you have any gut feeling that maybe we're back engineering alien craft?
No, we looked at, part of that avoiding technological surprise. We were looking at theoretical, TR2, technology readiness level 2 and 3, things that are theoretical that we think you should be able to do, but we haven't developed an engineered solution to operationalize it. So think of stealth. So we were able to achieve stealth in aircraft by materials and shapes to minimize that radar cross section. But we only really operate those systems at night. What if we could achieve a degree of optical stealth and now expand an operational window? So if you go back to Arnold in his movie Predator, where the alien had this little cloaking device and it kind of gave shimmering camouflage to the alien, well, you can purchase an optical shield that will move photons and will mimic the background. That technology is available today. Now, what if you could have an applicant or some type of thin skin that you could apply, to the fuselage, the skin of a aerial system to achieve that optical stealth, and you'd get that shimmering effect, and it would be less visible in daylight, especially in the not the infrared, but in the optical, where humans can see it. We had cases of things being reported where we had that shimmering effect, or you had like a corona, like a discharge around it. And we were going back to the scientists, someone achieved a breakthrough, with power or capability, we're able to operationalize this. We know you could do it, but the weight and the power requirement would mean that aircraft wouldn't have no range or no ability to carry a payload. But what if there's been some technological breakthrough, and maybe that could account for some of the UAP cases that we don't understand?
Yeah, but here's Tim.
I come from human.
But there's been so many reports of back engineering crash retrievals and stuff like that. Now, could there be another agency that is, that you wouldn't know about with the government handling stuff like that?
We thought about that. We actually talked to forensic accountants, people who investigate, money and how it flows and how it's used to, fund black programs. The amount of money and the amount of time and knowing human nature, I don't think so. We've been doing this for 70 years. And we had, the thing that Congress was most concerned about was the use of appropriated funds, without authority, trying to hide things from Congress. They were very concerned about that. And they took the claims of these witnesses that said that the U.S. government had recovered and reverse engineering alien technology, that we had the bodies in the freezer. We aggressively and thoroughly, examined every one of those cases with, in some cases, federal law enforcement officials trying to get to the, a better understanding of what this was. And we could find no credible evidence. Not at all. There were over 40 claims of SAPs and CAPs where witnesses came forward and said that their government or their government's contractors had programs being concealed from oversight where we recovered, reverse engineered, alien tech. We could not find any truth to those claims. Now, did we find programs where your government recovered foreign technology? Absolutely. We did. We have those programs. I helped manage and develop some of those initiatives when I was at the ODNI. But in every case, these were legitimate government programs that were briefed to Congress. Congress and the Gang of Eight were aware of them. There was nothing that we were able to discover that Congress hadn't already been briefed on. And we worked in very, very close cooperation with both the Department of Defense and the IGs. We worked with virtually every government R&D and S&T organization that is funded. We worked with many covert operations, people that were doing things that we didn't want to attribute it to the U.S. or in places we didn't want to be found at. We know them. We were given access. We were read onto their programs. We were able to inspect their facilities. We could not find any evidence to support these claims that we had recovered, reverse engineered, and were testing technology that was off-world. Now,
yeah, but I'm frustrated on this, Tim. Okay, I've watched this circus with Congress, with all these people saying, I know somebody or I seen, back engineered craft. Why haven't they been prosecuted for lying to Congress?
You're going to have to ask the elected officials in the department, Justin, about that. We investigated those claims thoroughly. We actually had a number of congressional delegations when people made claims about the things being hid in these tunnels or at this location, where we actually flew to those sites, met with the facility or the base commanders or facility managers, and we were able to do an on-site, search to try to validate these claims. We did that multiple times. We have been to virtually every spooky, secure test site that our nation has, and maybe some that you're not even aware of. And we could not find any evidence of off-world technologies, being exploited or had been recovered. Now, we did have, when AARO was established, we had, organizations, oh my God, I'm glad you're here. Here's our UFO crash part. It's been on this in its warehouse for 50 years, chillers. We have spent millions of dollars going back and trying to understand the materials, material analysis of these materials. Were they created by men, and were they, a product of this solar system? And every piece of equipment that we tested, despite the claims of the owner sometimes, we were able, with very, very high peer-reviewed scientific, high confidence, that those materials were invented and produced by men, by human beings. We were able to do that. We found nothing that could not be explained by science or did not come from the solar system.
Yeah, but how about NASA? I heard that NASA supposedly has a back-engineered UFO. Have you heard about that?
With NASA had that. They had that. What do they call it? UAP, or the not roundtable. They had a. I would say there's about a dozen highly esteemed scientists from across all disciplines got together and looked at the evidence, and we could find, the findings where there's things we don't quite understand, but there's no evidence that these events or things are from another world. We just could not find that. And, but talking about NASA, one of the things that we really wanted to do with NASA, and as we went through the transition with the new administration and new administrators, we wanted to have like a public science challenge. NASA's real famous on doing that, and we wanted to do that. We wanted to get a non-sensitive UAP case where we had hard evidence for, and actually give the materials to the public and say, can you help us understand this? I always thought collectively with writers working together, I wanted to do, crowdsourcing on some of the analysis. Take non-sensitive information and data and give it to other people for them to examine. Maybe get a third and fourth opinion what they thought it was. I think we would gain some insights. There are many advocacy groups that we started to work with and recognize that actually did good peer-reviewed science. I remember we reviewed a couple of PhD dissertations. The work was outstanding. The work was the equivalent of something that would, come out of the National Intelligence Council. We saw some really, really good scholarly work on the UAP topic, and we want to partner more with them. We want to partner, with groups that are trying to remove the stigma of UAP reporting. We want to get our network. We want state, local, tribal to be reporting to the federal government and AARO UAPs. We would love to partner with the state fusion centers. They've got something they don't understand. Hey, we've got an anomaly flying over the mountains there in Phoenix, and we've got 5,000 people have reported. What is it? Now, wouldn't it be great in near real time with that crowdsourcing that when there's an incident, it could get reported and we could be able to get capability on the ground quickly to understand it? I just think there's a lot of promise working together and taking this UAP investigation stuff out of the shadows.
Yeah,
now,
but our time is almost up, Tim, but would AARO, if they actually found proof tomorrow that we are being visited and actually had proof, would they announce it to the public, or is it going to be stuck in a closet?
We actually discussed this, and the consensus, what we would do, working with the cabinet secretaries, that would go to the executive, that would go to the White House, and say, here's the evidence, and it'd be well above our pay grade to announce that, because that would change human history, and AARO will work with the government, and we would probably leave that up to the White House on how they want to share that information. It wouldn't be coming from the director of AARO.
Interesting.
But
hey, Tim,
Tim,
I want to thank. Our time is up. I just want to thank you so much for being on tonight. It did clear up a lot of things, but do you feel we are being visited? That's my last question.
I actually think there are supernatural things and maybe other dimensions. I'm a Christian and I believe in supernatural things. And I actually believe there's things that we don't understand, and maybe we're not meant to understand, but I understand how harsh the space environment is to living tissue or living things as we know, and the time distance factor. If we're going to be visited by another sentient being, they're going to do it with robots. They're probably not going to do it with staffed manned aircraft. I just don't. That's not viable to me. The God's creation is too large. Maybe there's technology we can't even imagine today if we start holding space or going out of black holes. Maybe, but with our understanding of what's possible, I just don't see it. I think there could be an amazing technology or a world for 1 billion years that existed and they were swallowed by a black hole and they no longer exist. And now we're out there. And, how long Earth is going, our civilization and culture is going to exist. It's a big place. When I was in the Pacific, we talked about the tyranny of distance, and we were talking 10,000 miles.
Yeah.
Not the universe. It's possible. And that's one of the things we always did when we hired people. We didn't want skeptics and we didn't want believers. We wanted people that would look at the evidence and make a sound assessment based on analytic tradecraft and peer-reviewed science.
Very interesting. Hey, Tim, again, I got to let you go, but I want to thank you so much for coming on here tonight.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Okay. You have a great weekend, will you?
I sure will. Thank you.
Okay. We'll be right back with our next guest, so stay tuned. You're listening to Night Dreams.
Diving into the headlines of the mysterious and unexplained, this is The Unseen News with Guy Ticker, where the extraordinary is just the beginning. Hello, listeners. I'm your news director, Guy Ticker, and folks, do I have a story for you? It's the talk of TikTok, the buzz of YouTube, and the fuel for about 1 million conspiracy podcasts. Everyone's losing their minds over something called the 3-Eye Atlas. This is NDTR Breaking News. We interrupt ourselves as new details appear to have just come in on the 3-Eye Atlas. Now, according to this, depending on who you ask, it's an alien invasion, a top-secret government experiment, or a giant cosmic bowling ball headed straight for Earth. Well, hold on to your tinfoil hats, because apparently, according to what just came in, the world is ending again. Yes, that's right. People are stockpiling beans, batteries, and bottled water, while your cousin Larry, the one who knows a guy at NASA, swears the mothership is already parked over Cleveland. Come on, people, what have you been drinking, or smoking, or taking? Whoa! Watch where you're pointing that thing, you green. Let's get real. Every time someone sees a blinking light in the sky, half the internet goes nuts. If this really were an alien invasion, I guarantee you they'd take one look at Earth and shake their heads and say, Glignock, which is their language for, no thanks, we've seen enough of this reality show. Now, don't get me wrong. If the 3-Eye Atlas is alien, I'm not too worried. I've lost enough weight lately that I can fit right under my bed. Who needs a bunker when you've got a good mattress and a good sense of humor?
This has been Breaking News on the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. Stay tuned to your local station for further updates.
And back we are, just where we were a moment ago. Let's be honest, folks. If aliens actually are watching us, they're probably saying, I'm not going to do it in that language again. They're probably saying, wow, these humans believe everything on TikTok. Maybe we should just turn this ship around. Here they go. So, before you start digging that bunker, relax. The 3-Eye Atlas isn't coming to steal your Wi-Fi, your car, or your morning coffee. Save the panic when gas hits $10 a gallon again. I'm Guy Ticker, and if the mothership does land, you can bet I'll have the exclusive right here on Night Dreams Forbidden Realms. We now return you once again to your regularly scheduled program. From deep within the broadcast bunker, a voice cuts through the static and smashes the silence. This is the show that rips the lid off reality, exposes the shadows, and dares to ask the questions no one else will. Get ready for truth at full throttle with the man himself, Gary Anderson.
And we are back. JC, here's where I am really upset. You know, I was very polite with our guest, with Errol, but here's the point. They're basically saying UAPs, UFOs, flying discs that when my wife gets mad at me, she throws the saucers at me, don't really exist. Only maybe a handful in recorded time of things that could be possibly a UFO. No back engineering, no nothing about this. Basically, even astronauts, probably didn't see any strange things there. What's your take on it?
Well, yeah, I mean, if they're gone by actual tangible evidence that they recovered, yeah, there probably isn't nothing because, first of all, people aren't going to give it up. There's a lot of not real stuff. And honestly, if they found some of that stuff, would they release it or course, would they pass the buck to the White House or whatever it may be? Like I say, yeah, I think there's stuff coming here, whether it's coming from outer space or it's been here from the oceans or wherever it's from. There's definitely something coming here, but from where and what's their purpose, who knows?
But not as many as what you hear over on all these podcasts or on TikTok and stuff like it's an everyday thing. I can't believe that. Or I point at the sky with my finger and a UFO appears. I don't buy that either. But, I do believe that Roswell happened. I believe that we are being visited, and I had an encounter in the mid-'70s. So I do believe, that things are going on that is strange. And as you know, my late friend, Art Bell, did not believe in UFOs at all. And then back in, September 29th, 1994, him and Ramona were coming back from Las Vegas, going back to Pahrump, and they saw a black triangle, huge, just moving really slow. So that tells me we didn't have that type of technology back in 94. Let's get some information about our next guest, because I'll tell you what, I'm wound up right now.
Dr. Gregory Rogers, DO, aerospace medicine expert and UAP witness. Dr. Gregory Rogers is a retired U.S. Air Force major and former chief of aerospace medicine for the 45th Space Wing at Cape Canaveral, with over 40 years of service in military and space medicine. He was trained at NASA's Johnson Space Center and supported numerous manned and unmanned space missions. In 1992, while stationed at Cape Canaveral, Dr. Rogers was shown classified footage of a 20-foot disc-shaped craft marked with U.S. Air Force insignia, hovering silently and defying conventional aerodynamics. When he asked about its origin, the response was chilling. "We got it from them." Since retiring, Dr. Rogers has spoken publicly on UAP encounters and currently serves on the board of directors for the International UFO Bureau, lending his credibility and first-hand experience to the global conversation on unexplained aerial phenomena.
Well, Doctor, how are you doing tonight? I don't have any audio for you. Let's see. There we go. Let's try it now.
Okay,
I'm getting feedback.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what is going on here. Let's see.
Did that help?
No. Let's see. Let me try something here. Can you still hear me?
Did that help?
Okay, we're getting feedback. I'll tell you what, I'm going to...
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you, but it's like double hearing you. I'm going to hang up on you, and I'm going to send you a new link, and we'll try that. So I'm going to send you a new link.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I'm going to send you a new link to your email, and we're going to try redoing this again. So let's do that. We'll be right back. This is Night Dreams Talk Radio, and, let's do this.
Time slips. A haunted office building on a haunted street. A haunted coal town. Mysterious black cats. Unexplained light anomalies. UFOs, UAPs in the air and on the ground. Bridges in liminal spaces. Cryptids, shamans, and a werewolf. Disclosure. You don't need a ranch in Utah. All this and more happens in rural southwestern Pennsylvania. Now available on Amazon from author Kevin Paul. Politics and the Paranormal in Greene County, Pennsylvania. Read this captivating book as soon as you can by author Kevin Paul.
And we're back. JC, you might get a hold of him, and because he wasn't hearing me, and tell him that I sent him a new link, and we'll have to try that.
Okay, will do.
Okay. My concern is here with AARO. I mean, I really respect him and what they're trying to do. But again, something isn't kosher there on the fishing boat. Because here's my concern is that, let's be honest with you, they're saying basically that UAPs don't really exist. They have no proof of it. Now I think we got him back. Are you there?
Okay, I hope so.
Yeah, you're there. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank Mindy Topfast and Terry Lindekeel for having me as one of the board members for the International UFO Bureau, but I have also been added to the IMEX network in Mexico City. Dr. Federico Vidal has made me a senior member there, and so I'm on their advisor committee. So I'd like to say thank you for that.
Well, again, thank you for sharing that information. When you were at NASA, did any of the astronauts ever talk to you about UAPs? I'm not going to say UAP anymore tonight. UFOs. Did they have any encounters?
Yes.
Were they off-world type of craft, or did they think it maybe could have been on-world craft?
It was not what we made. Let me mention things from a non-bureaucratic standpoint. When I was flying F-16s, it was a 12G or better airframe because of how strong the aircraft was built. The problem was the humans were the weak link. So we had limiters to 9Gs. The aircraft would not let us go beyond 9Gs because we humans couldn't take it. In fact, even at 7 and 8Gs, you didn't want to do that for very long. So let me talk about the G factors.
Yeah, please do.
For a minute. I had a Black Hawk in my unit crash. And when we did the investigation, thankfully, God was looking out for the crew. But all three crew members survived in damaged form. But when we got through with the accident investigation, we estimated that the Black Hawk impacted at 22 Gs, which was barely survivable. Let me point out something else. When you have a main battle tank and you're wanting to destroy another main battle tank, and so these are the most armored vehicles ever made. Well, we can fire a sabot round that has a little boot on each side, but the actual weapon itself is only barely an inch wide, made of materials like depleted uranium. Now then, this was fired at a very high rate of speed, 1,700 meters per second. So if there's a tank 1.7 kilometers away, when our tank fires this sabot round, the inner core, the dart, is going to impact that tank in 1 second. Now then, when that depleted uranium round, or it could be tungsten, but when that sabot round hits that tank, it's going to be traveling so fast that it's going to hit with 30 Gs of force. It will absolutely destroy that vehicle. It will destroy any vehicle that we make. We do not have a tank that can survive being hit by a sabot round at 30 Gs. Now then, when we think about reports of UAPs that are doing extraordinary things, they turn very fast, and they may exceed 100 Gs. They may exceed 300 Gs. They may exceed 500 Gs. We have times that we calculate that that their vehicle has exceeded 1,000 Gs. Now then, we may not be able to say, we know that this craft is from X, but we know one thing. If it is maneuvering greater than 100 Gs, 500 Gs, 1,000 Gs, that is not our aircraft.
Well, I got to ask you a question.
That is not our spacecraft. So it automatically is not human made.
But
so
Roger,
no matter what explanation anybody comes up, that was not a human vehicle that we just watched.
Yeah, but Roger, here's the thing too. If it was biological matter and these craft that are making these maneuvers at all these high Gs, wouldn't it, if they were occupants inside, wouldn't they be liquefied?
Unless they are using physics we don't know about. And if they are doing these things, they are using physics we don't know about. Let me give you another example. I flew T-38 supersonic trainers and F-16s. We launched the space shuttle. We launched unmanned missiles. No matter what vehicle we have, whether it's aircraft, spacecraft, it doesn't matter. When we break the speed of Mach, it produces a sonic boom. It is impossible for us to break the sound barrier without producing a sonic boom. These vehicles can accelerate from stationary to thousands of miles an hour. And guess what? They do not produce sonic booms. They are using entirely different kinds of physics than what we use. So, are we going to have evidence of a craft that just did something using advanced technology and physics that we cannot in any way comprehend? No. So if we're wanting to say we have to have absolute proof before we're going to admit to anything, then what that means is we're going to see the things, but we're not going to admit to it.
Well, that's I think, I hate to say it, and I said it so many times, I think we're being whitewashed with the Congress. I think, no offense to AARO, I think they're trying to do something, but they're trying to, it's like Project Blue Book. And I confronted him about that, and he said it's not anywhere like it. Yes, we have computers now. They didn't have computers like we have now. We have AI, but again, I don't think they would tell us the truth anyway.
They have better graphics than Project Blue Book, but the overall intent is the same. When we go back, they're trying to say, okay, what we're seeing today is advanced technology. There are some of the things that we're doing that are advanced technology. I was working with the space shuttle before 1972. That was science fiction. There was no such thing, but we built it and it became science fact. Well, when we are looking in the past, if you look back to the Incas and the Mayans and the Vedic texts of India, these people were seeing the same kind of things that we are seeing now. In the Vedic text, one of the things that I found very interesting was that there's a report of an arrow that once it was fired, it would track its target and destroy it. Now then, having flown F-16s, my first thought is, okay, that's an air-to-air missile. Now then, we believe in air-to-air missiles because we make them and we watch them. But those people in those ancient times were seeing exactly the same thing. They were telling us how they were functioning. They drew pictures. They wrote books. And there was no way human technology was doing it back then. So I think it is arrogant for us to say our current scientists are going to go back 2,300 years ago and tell the people who said that they saw this that they're liars, they're mistaken, they don't know what they're talking about. they built all kinds of amazing things. They kept track of their crops. They wrote epics like the Epic of Gilgamesh back then. They were writing stories, but they said, this is what we saw, and here's a picture of it. And now we are saying, no, you people were all wrong. If we look at the Anasazi in America, and they were talking about the star people who came down, and they drew pictures of star people, and they have passed this down for hundreds of years. Are we going to say that every one of them was a liar? They were mistaken?
Well, Roger,
even though they saw these craft, we can now tell them, no, you didn't see the craft. The craft did not do what you described.
Well,
but
Roger,
the thing is, they did.
But you have to realize this, that if you go back to even biblical times, you know, they have found in caves drawing of craft on cave walls. You look at the Great Pyramids, you look at the pyramids all around the Incas, the Mayas, all around the world. How did they have the technology? They didn't have internet to communicate. Well, hey, you know, this is the diagram and schematics to build a pyramid. I mean, a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense. And why did certain human races like put value on gold as precious? Not zinc, not copper, not pewter, but gold. It tells me that we were visited at one point, and that is how our civilization started. And so to come out and say that, you know, we're not being visited, we don't have no proof of any of this stuff, it's all hearsay, is really frustrating. Now, again, like I've told you when we had some talks off the air, this has gone rampant. Ufology, I've never seen it in 50 years, so bizarre as it's going right now. All these fake claims as real. I mean, it's coming out of the woodwork. And how do we separate this, Roger?
Well, when we have guys like Ryan Graves, Dave Fravor, they set their Mark I eyeballs on these vehicles and they watched them. Now, their aircraft were able to record them videographically. We have radars that can tell us how fast they were traveling, and they were traveling faster than any human-made craft can. And for us to continue to say, don't believe any of this stuff, only believe what we tell you, I find very disturbing. We know what is there. We know what has been there. My father-in-law saw Foo Fighters when he was flying B-17s over Germany. And now they say, oh, well, that wasn't really there. No, he saw them. All of our people saw these things, and we could not describe them, and they were behaving in fashions that we do not have technology to match at that time, and we would hardly have technology to match it now. These people were not lying. The evidence is there. We know the evidence is there. I keep telling people, we are past the point of saying UAPs are real. We have plenty of evidence that UAPs are real.
Well,
the real question is, what are we going to do about it?
AARO says that basically it's not real.
I hate to say it, but if the government hires people to say it's not real, they're going to say it's not real. There were people before we even had airplanes that were describing flying craft 500 years ago. In the city of Nuremberg, there's a famous broadsheet that was made where they were showing aircraft flying and fighting in the sky. And now we're going to go back 500 years later and say, no, you guys were lying. You didn't see what you saw. You were mistaken. You were all drunk. No, these people reported this. They drew pictures of it. And that was long before we had any human technology that could match any of that. So how can we say all of that is fake? I don't believe we can.
Well, then also it tells me that the astronauts and the astronauts on the space station and all the, going even to the moon, they all lied because they didn't see any craft. That's the whole point. I mean, what is the purpose of them coming out and saying that these things basically are exaggerated?
The government has reasons to keep secrets. Many of the secrets are kept for very good reasons. But once the government gets used to lying, if there's something that is uncomfortable, you just keep lying about it. They have made this statement. There is no credible evidence of a reverse engineered UAP. Well, that can hold a lot of credence when you're writing white papers in the Pentagon, except that I saw one.
Yeah, you did. And I want you right now, wait a minute. I want you to describe to the new listeners out there, what did you see? What did it look like? What did it do?
It was approximately 20 feet in length. It had a pearly white surface. It looked sort of like a modified egg. An egg is sort of oblong. If you smoothed it out to where the length is equal in all directions, that's sort of what it looked like. It had no rivets. It had no seams. It had no flight control surfaces, no pitot tubes. The only way I could really give a description of the positioning of the spacecraft itself was because there were 4 horizontal rectangles from the 1230 to 230 position, the 330 to 530 position, the 630 to 830 position, and the 930 to 1130 position. On the upper half of the craft, there were vertical black rectangles at the 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 12 o'clock position. Without these black markings, the surface was so smooth, when it started to move, I probably would not have been able to see it. But that's why on test vehicles, you put markings so that you can make sure that you're checking all of the motion of your test vehicle. And I felt this was reverse engineered UAP. Now then, as it rotated, I noticed that at what I called the 12 o'clock position, it said U.S. Air Force. And just above that, there was a U.S. flight insignia. And so this lifted off the ground in a very smooth manner. It then rotated 360 degrees clockwise. It paused. It rotated 360 degrees counterclockwise. It moved left and right, forward and back. And so it's just like you're testing the control mechanism. At the very top, there was a small dome with a mast on it, and the mast was attached to 3 umbilicals. I would assume one of the umbilicals was probably electrical power, and I don't know what the other 2 were, but it's probably control mechanisms. Well, as I kept watching this thing, it moved to a 45-degree position and remained completely stationary. Now, I got my solo certificate in helicopters, and I flew H-1 Cobras, OH-58 Scouts. I flew UH-1 Cobras, UH-1 Hueys. I love Hueys. It's my favorite aircraft. But I also flew T-37 jet trainers, T-38 supersonic jet trainers, and also F-16s. So I know aerodynamics. I know flight characteristics. I supported the space shuttle. I supported the Titan, Delta, and Atlas launch unmanned launch vehicles from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, because I was a major in the Air Force, trained by NASA, but I was the chief of aerospace medicine. And so I saw this vehicle while I was at work on Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. So when people say there's no evidence of anything like that, well, there may be no evidence that you have seen, but I watched it. So I just don't know when people are saying they have no evidence. Well, I have no evidence. Could not take an iPhone in there. We didn't have iPhones, but it was a secure facility. I had a pager, but I had to leave it outside in my car because I could not take any electronic equipment into that facility. So there was no way that I could have created any type of evidence that I could have taken with me out of that facility. I would have been breaking the rules of Cape Canaveral and security, because you couldn't even take a picture on Cape Canaveral unless you had clearance to do so.
Okay,
so,
hey, Roger, let's take like one or two phone calls. So let me do this real quick.
Our call-in line is now open. The number is 1-253-260-5713. That's 1-253-260-5713.
Okay, if you want to call in and talk to our guests and ask them a question or two, now's the time to do it. But here's the I'm frustrated. We're never going to get the truth. Not from the government, because I don't know if they're scared that if they come truthful now about UAPs or UFOs or crash retrievals or back engineering, then people are going to, like I said so many times on the show, they're going to come back and they're not going to trust the government at all on anything, because again, I feel we've been lied to. Do you feel Roswell happened?
I think that something happened at Roswell, and I think it was probably as described. But I want to point out something else.
Go ahead.
There are economic factors involved here. If we discover a technology that is absolutely superior to what everybody else on Earth has, and it comes from a source like this, the U.S. government is in serious trouble, because who do you give it to? If you give it to this contractor, they make billions of dollars. Every other contractor is going to sue the government because they weren't included. So within the military-industrial complex, there are lots of issues that come down to dollars and power. You can't just make everything black and white, because even looking at flying in space, people think flying in space is easy. Flying in space is very difficult. We have to overcome all kinds of difficulties that most people never even conceive of. So everything is difficult, but when you start talking about you're going to develop a technology that can make trillions of dollars, are you going to share it equally between every contractor? Are you going to give part of it to one contractor, part of it to another contractor? There's a lot of issues to this that most people do not think about. But anytime you're dealing with the military, the government, and contractors, you're dealing with money. And there are monetary issues and control of monetary issues that are beyond most people's comprehension. So that is a complex issue that there would be no easy answers once you developed a $1 trillion technology.
Yeah, interesting. We got a caller. Who do we have out there?
This is Tom.
Hi, Tom. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, sir. The question for you, Doctor, is, well, number one, I've been listening to what you have to say, and as someone who knows that when you basically have a technology here that's been here for over 100 years that's based on crude oil and petroleum, natural gas, and you may or may not, the government may or may not have technology that surpasses that. 0-point energy is talked about a lot, but you make a really good point, and that is when you're talking about billions or trillions of dollars, they're not easily going to give that up, and I really appreciate your take on that.
Well, I can assure you, working with NASA, everything that we did, when you're looking at contractors and contractor consortiums, let me give you an example. This one time, they left an I-beam in the rear compartment of Atlantis. And as they moved Atlantis out of the orbiter processing facility and into the vehicle assembly building, and they raised it up to try to mate it to the external tank and the solid rocket boosters, this loose I-beam fell, damaging things on the way down. So, the funny thing is NASA wasn't going to admit what it was. So they said, this is a vibroacoustic anomaly. So we're going to take it back to the orbiter processing facility to assess this. It was a vibroacoustic anomaly because an 8-foot I-beam that had not been removed fell and hit things on the way down. So it caused vibrations and it caused noise. But when they got it back and put it in there and discovered what it was, there was all kinds of sort of tricks done because they didn't want to blame it on a specific contractor, because then that contractor would end up having to lose a whole big bunch of money. So they did some sort of things. They ended up fixing it. It launched later safely. But what was going on behind the scenes within the contracting office between the different contractors who were saying, no, it's not our fault, it's their fault. And as the NASA managers were fighting this out, to my knowledge, they ended up saying nobody's to blame and nobody paid a fine for it.
Okay. Gary, do I have permission to ask one more question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Doctor, do you believe that we now actually have 0-point energy of some sort, and because of the bureaucracy involved and the technocracy that's involved, we're not about to release it?
I do not believe we have 0-point energy. I would love to say that we do, but that's not something you're going to hide. Whoever discovers that is going to get a Nobel Prize. You're not going to hide that. Someone's going to step up and take credit. And then once you do that, you're going to be fighting over all of the profits that will be generated. So nobody's going to hide the fact that we actually discovered 0-point energy.
Good answer, Roger. We got another caller. Who do we have?
Hi there, this is AC. Hi, Gary, and hi, Dr. Rogers. Oh,
hi.
Great show, great show tonight. I got a question, just many things as I'm listening to you guys, especially Dr. Rogers on your, back in the Vedas and all those things. A craft that I've seen was the, like a cone shape, the 14th century painting, where it's got the spikes on it and there's a little man inside, and about 12 years ago today, there was one like that, but in a different shape, but about the size of half of a school bus. It popped out. I'm over in Orange County, where it popped out towards Catalina area, where I was coming over a hill. And it had, as soon as it popped out, my friend passed out next to me while I'm watching this thing. But it was like a cone shape. It had 3 spikes on the roundish part up at the top, and 3 spikes at the bottom. But it was all white, and when it disappeared, he woke up. But this is something that resonated when I saw those History Channel things where you see back where they show paintings in the biblical books. But again, an orbs, if what I can understand about what you're saying, that the last caller, like there's no orbs, these things that are moving and making turns or speeding across the sky at high speeds, I don't believe that they're ours, but I believe we have, drones, but I don't think they can do that kind of maneuvering. And my one question I'd like to get, what I've seen so many in every of the UFO issues, once I made eye contact, I felt that they had recognized and then made the maneuvers to disappear in different ways, but reacted to complete eye contact. I like to get your opinion on, when somebody like myself, I see something and it contactly stops right in midair or makes a maneuver because of my contact with it. I mean, it's hard to explain, but it just seems that that's been familiar with every craft that I've seen. I want to get your opinion on that one. Is there a contact? Are they understanding our minds? Can we try to figure that there's a communication with us?
Well, I believe in God, and so I go back to the Bible. Elijah was walking along with Elisha, and Elisha had been told by the sons of the prophet, don't you know today is when your master is going to heaven? Well, guess what? A vehicle came down. It was in clouds. They called it a blazing, fiery chariot. Well, the fastest thing they knew was a chariot. So they didn't have a term for rockets. They didn't have a term, they would not know what a space shuttle was. But it came down, interacted with Elijah, and took him out. When you go back to Numbers chapter 6, it said that the sons of God were coming down unto the daughters of men. And they were having sexual activity, and they were breeding hybrids. Now, then, when we hear about abductions and they say that they are breeding hybrids, and people say, no, that could never happen. Well, it happened in Genesis chapter 6. So, are you not going to believe the Bible? Are you going to say all of those people back then who said these things were liars? They were mistaken. None of that was true. Well, if it was true back then, why would it not be true now? So when we're seeing the same kind of events, it's because the same things are happening.
One last question. What do you feel that they're doing, in my case, what they're doing when they do come around me? I mean, low level, feet away, and I just get the reaction of awe, and look at it, but it's just like they're staring at me. You could feel it. You could just feel a connection, but they're shy, or are they just saying, oh, I got caught. They completely stop, and then they either disappear right there, or they do a quick maneuver and move away real quick. I felt there's something there, but and I'm a believer in God, and I just don't know why I get the attention. I told a father about that from a Catholic church, and he says, well, you got a lot of energy. They sense you, but it just seems to be that there is a reaction. I like to know what you feel about that. When I contacted with them, my eye contact with them, that I would get a reaction from them. You could feel it inside that, oh, I got caught. This person is looking at me from instant sight.
Well,
What do you
if
think?
you look at the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, angels went into the city, and unfortunately, the people in there wanted to interact with them in a very bad way. And so they had to take action against the people of that city. If those things were happening then, and these are the same kind of beings that God has created, it's still going on.
Good answer. You know, our time is almost up. Is there any one thing you want to say to, you know, you got about 5 minutes, whatever you want to share tonight.
Ancient people were not stupid. When you look at all of the kinds of technologies they developed, they were smart people. So when they wrote stories and they made paintings of what they saw, we should believe them because they were as smart as we are. They just didn't have the same kind of technology. I'm going to mention my book real quick, but I mentioned this kind of stuff in the book I wrote. We got it from them. And the reason I called it We Got It From Them is because when the guy showed me the saucer, I said, who would make something like that? And he said, we got it from them. So he was telling me we got it from people who were not of this planet. So when I wrote my book, I figured you can't come up with a better name than that. So that's why I chose the name of my book. We got it from them.
And we have, too. That is so true. And you also are now writing a blog, too, for our website weekly, too. So I want to thank you for that.
I wanted to start off with the space weather because people don't understand how dependent we are on our satellites, on our communications, and even a minor solar flare can cause all kinds of difficult things. But I won't go into it, but there was a thing called the Carrington event back in, I believe it was 1859, and it destroyed telegraphs, and it sent electrical shocks to people, and it did all sorts of things. The technology was very primitive in 1859 compared to us. If the Carrington event was to happen in our generation, it could set the entire world back years, if not decades. And so it's a good thing that NASA, the European Space Agency, are paying attention to space weather to give us clues. There are times that if we see that there's a solar flare, some of our satellites will go into protective measures so that they don't fry all their circuitry. But most people don't think about this. But it's a good thing that NASA and our scientists are looking at the space weather, well, especially with the degree of technology. So that's why I chose that as my first blog to write.
And, you know, I'm really glad you did that. But, you know, a lot of people don't realize if we had a big solar flare, it would take out our grid system. Okay, that means your cell phone isn't going to work. You're not going to go on the internet. Your car probably isn't going to start because the cars now are all computerized and electronics. If you have a 57 Etzel, you'll probably start okay. But here's the problem.
No, it wouldn't.
It wouldn't even that. Okay, well, then I'll get rid of my 57 Etzel. It's been sitting here all. But here's the thing. How long would society take before it starts breaking down? That's the scary part.
It would totally depend upon the severity. A solar flare is not going to do that. What would really do it would be a coronal mass ejection, or CME. And so I mentioned that in my blog. And, when people think about, what could destroy the world, man, a CME would do it. And there are protections that we need to make, but there's only certain kinds of things that we can do to protect our planet from what the sun can do. And we can be very thankful that we have a magnetosphere to protect us from all the ionizing radiation that the sun sends at us every single day.
That's scary too. Last thing, your take on, again, it's going really crazy right now on the 3-eye atlas. It's really crazy out there. I don't even know what to believe no more.
I'm just going to stick with the chemistry. The nickel alloys that were seen with the presence of no iron whatsoever tells me that that looks like a manufactured craft.
It does. Hey, I want to think.
When we make our satellites, that's what we do.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much for coming on tonight. I got to let you go. We got to wrap up the show.
Okay.
And I'll be talking to you probably later next week.
Sure.
Okay, my friend.
I'll be back.
Okay. You take care, my friend.
Sure.
Well, JC, we got some great shows coming up. Who do we have besides next week? We got actor Thomas Jane, The Punisher, The Deep Blue Sea, and so much more. And then we also have Ron Fitzgerald, who's done a lot of vampire type movies, and he's a magician, and I've been still trying to talk him into putting you in a coffin and setting it on fire, but you won't do it. But who else do we have coming up?
Well, the Thursday of next week, we have Joe Clifford coming on talking about shadow people. And then, of course, we have Thomas Jane and Ron. But then the following week, we have Samuel Chung coming back on talking about some UFO-related things that's going on in today's world. And then November 7th, Friday, we have Mark D'Antonio coming back on. He hasn't been on in a while. He's going to talk about maybe 3-eye atlas, USOs, all kind of stuff, because he does analyze a lot of UFO videos and pictures, and he's researched a lot of this stuff. Plus, he's a scientist.
Yeah, and then we have Stan Dale coming back, which hasn't been on. He hasn't been on for a couple of years, and he's going to be talking about the sun, isn't he?
He is. Stan Dale will be on in early to mid-December talking about what's going on with the sun, because there's a lot going on, and he has researched that topic for many years, so he's got some new updates.
Oh, yeah. So we got some great shows coming up, don't we?
We do, and that's just some of them. So, yeah, you want to stay tuned for sure.
Yeah, and please give us a comment on the show if you like it or not like it. Give us a thumbs up, and please subscribe to the channel and tell your friends about us. And I hope everybody that's on chat tonight enjoyed the show. I mean, it was interesting here tonight. And, well, till next Thursday, everybody have a good one. Boy, do I got a bunch of work tomorrow taking care of the horses and the goats. So everybody have a good one. We'll catch you on the other side.
Available now. Bigfoot Origins, The Search for the Cryptid Homeland by Mike Dupler. This is the most comprehensive and in-depth examination of Bigfoot ever written. How did Bigfoot in North America, the Yowie in Australia, and the Woodwoes, Britain's Bigfoot, get to where they are today? Mike Dupler connects the dots, and the conclusions are incredible. This changes everything. Don't be left out in the woods, in the cold, not knowing. Read Bigfoot Origins, The Search for the Cryptid Homeland by Mike Dupler. Available now on Amazon.
Who's friends with all the night dreamers talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not in sight. Bigfoot's on his tail flying